Has your clapperboard shrunk? Or is it the same clapperboard?
That's called near and far away. Yeah. In the room, 52 Jokers wild. Those cows are in the field are far away. And the fence is near.
Unless you're in Casablanca where they put the plane, and the plane is actually closer to than the actors and actresses.
That's it.
Right,
so
false perspective.
We're in February. Though we shouldn't be saying that. We're in some year, sometime, somewhen. Doesn't really matter, but we're here.
Well, actually, it's the beginning of the Chinese calendar today. It's the year of the ox.
Now, I was going to say, is an ox a bull? Is it year of bull? You know, or is it, I don't know if the ox is a bull, but I was thinking.
Well, the air that we've been spinning around here definitely smells as though it's been a few.
That's it. So if there was the year of the bull, then there'd be a lot of that, and we're very used to it, and that's what we do best.
Yes.
Now, ox is like oxo cubes. It must be a bull. It's oxo. It's is it beef, as you would say? Therefore, is ox male? And if it is male beef, is it a bull?
Well, the interesting thing is that an ox, also known as a bullock in Australia and India, is basically a male. It's a male cattle.
Which is a bull.
Actually, an oxen is commonly castrated adult male cattle. So I don't think.
All right, hold on a second. What it is this bull, or this, no, a bull is not castrated, I wouldn't think. Now, with the ox, you're saying might be castrated. He's a castrato. So he's actually a good singer. He's a very good singer, whoever this ox is. And a bit girly in tune, but well liked by the Italians and the opera set. So, I mean, so the year of the ox, the castrated bull, the opera singer. You know, actually what's interesting as well with today's date, even though we're not meant to say anything about today's date because it draws a timeline, is it's the 12th of the 2nd, 21, a palindrome. It happens so many years. It's 12221. I don't know what that is in any other language. It's a palindrome. But then you start going, are they cheating? Is it 02? In their calendar speak for 1999, it's 02. It's not 2. So it's cheating if you're leaving out the O. But then again, who puts O's in front of numbers in the normal schemes of things?
Yeah, it does actually work because my son and daughter-in-law got married on the 2nd of the 2nd, 2020. So they actually used 0202 2020 for the same reason.
No, but that's not a palindrome. That's 020202. No, 20. If you work it backwards.
Oh, it is.
Oh, it is. You're right. I lied.
It is. That's it. Is. Yeah. That was the reason why, my daughter-in-law was very specific in making sure that was the date they were going to get married. So that's when they got married. So it seems that a year later, we're 10 days further on, which is quite interesting.
Actually, I'm actually looking at the date on my computer here and I'm going, right, made a feck up with that one. It works as a 12221. But if you actually put the things in, it's 1202 2021 is the palindrome. So it depends. If you leave the zeros out, it works. If you put them in, it works. So depending on how the American format or the English format calendar structure is for computer purposes. But either which way,
it still works.
There's symmetry in the numbers of today.
Yeah, there is, because it is. It's 1202 2021. So it is. It's working. It's working right.
Again, you were saying it's the year of the bull. Did it, or not the year of the ox? Did it start on the 12th or did it start on the 1st of the year? I mean, is today's date the beginning in that calendar? Date. Right. There's an interesting thing. So today, 1202021 is the beginning of the year of the ox in the Chinese calendar. And it's beginning with a nice little palindrome. So it's off to a good start. We're taking it from our point of view as being the year of the bull. We've every year has been the year of the bull in our calendar. We're taking it being the bull. We're not castrated. That's why we're saying bull and not ox. So there you go.
It's also the lunar year apparently as well. So it's the Chinese zodiac animal is the ox, but the year is actually a lunar year, apparently, most commonly associated with the Chinese year and spring festival.
Now we're actually in George. We're in danger of getting into the language of. Actually, I've nearly forgotten the word. I was going to say it's your star signs. And if you start to talk star signs, we're going to get into what's your star sign and what's your future. Now, I used to love reading the funnies in the newspapers. It was the only thing. I didn't read the sports section. I went straight to maybe the far side. I think we've mentioned that before. Maybe even the chess section. Never really understood it, but I thought it looked as if I might. I loved to be in the Financial Times looking as if I knew what the hell was going on in that section. Not really, didn't know what was going on. But what I did read, and everyone does, they can't help it, is your horoscope, your star sign. You go to the horoscope section, you zone into your star sign, you look at what your today's little bit of info is. Did I find my love? Did I have a problem? Is there some good news in my near future? And if it turns out there was bad news, you move to the one above and says, I'll take that one instead. So but I mean, we're trying to influence our star signs. We're trying to influence, our horoscope is what those airy fairy ones might say is coming down the line based on a generic interpretation of the masses of the stars in the sky for those born under that star sign. Pisces in my case, bit fishy. I'm a bit fishy at the best of times, but and not necessarily the smell. But I'm a water sign. I'm optimistic. I'm outgoing.
You see, you're in trouble at the moment because we're in Aquarius, which is the Waterbearer. And the image of the Waterbearer is he's tipping the water out. So the fish are being tipped out of water. So the next thing is they come into the next month, which is the 21st. And the fish are swimming around trying to find water because the flipping Aquarius guy went and threw them out in the previous month. It's desperate,
We actually.
No wonder they run around like rams.
There's a little bit of serendipity. We have a couple of interns working with us at the moment, and we needed to find a couple of our shows for them to cut and edit and slice and dice. And we actually looked at what ones had we not done in the past, and the gas thing is, here's the fish back again. 2 out of the 20 ones we didn't do, I think one was called Kettle of Fish, the other one you might remember the name of it, but both of them had images of sharks or dolphins or fish in the background. And here we are. I didn't know we were going to be talking about star signs.
I think that one was,
and not only that, I've mentioned Pisces and the fish symbol, and it's after happening 3 times possibly in the last hour that it's these fish, these sharks, these dolphin-friendly tuna or shark-friendly tuna in our language.
Yeah, because the other thing that's quite interesting is who was chasing the Capricorn into the Aquarius was actually Sagittarius with his bow and arrow trying to shoot at the devil, which is the Capricorn character, if you like. But he might have been stung by the Scorpion in the previous month, who was weighing up the scales of how things were in September, being Libra. Now, there's the thing. There was a virgin running around in August, for goodness sake. But she was being chased by a lion who was actually snapping away, his feet were being snapped up by a crabby crab. And there were 2 twins who were basically backstabbing the crab.
Now, are you making this up? I'm starting to worry you're reading something here.
I am. There you
Stop
go.
annoying me now. That's enough of that nonsense.
People. No, but here we go.
Nonsense.
Let's bring it back.
No, you would have been impressed
by the bull. So
you didn't impress me, George. You were reading. I thought, for God's sake, he said to string a great story together off the cuff, knew his star signs, and you're reading it. No, I'm not impressed. That's not impressing me now. You nearly impressed me because I said, Mother of God,
he knows his horoscopes. I was dazzled.
No.
No,
I remembered.
But I was making a story up there.
No, you weren't.
Story that was being told.
You went too deep, too wide.
The devil's in there.
Anyway, we're not interested.
Back to the ox. I got us back to the ox, which is a Chinese year. Yeah. Anyway, I'm a lunatic anyway, because that's the sign of the crab is the lunar. So we've got the lunatic. The lunatic is here, telling the stories.
There now we can run with that one.
Crazy stuff.
The lunatics are running the asylum. That's what comes to mind now. And I think a movie there with, I can't even remember his name, but it's again set in an asylum, and it's just eluding me. It's starting to come into my mindset, and it's a very famous
movie. The one that flew over the cuckoo's nest?
Yes, you have. I knew if I waited long enough, you'd say it. But I mean,
what flew over the cuckoo's nest? Well, the film I was watching last night was the sequel to Iron Sky. In the first version of that, it was that after the World War II, the Nazis actually had scarpered off in their UFOs, because that's where the one that crashed in where was it now? Roswell was. Basically, the Germans had scarpered off to the far side of the moon, where they were hidden from the rest of us for all this time. So they decided 2 years ago to come and invade. And then this other story that I was watching last night was about how they were actually reptiles and all the conspiracy theorist stuff, which was the follow-up, and going back in time somewhere. What was really great about this was they actually flew to the South Pole to go into the interior of the world, where there were still dinosaurs running around, to find this substance that could cure everybody so they could go back to their planet on the outside of the world. Weird stuff, but you could see where all the things has come from.
No, it wasn't weird
conspiracy
stuff,
theories and ancient aliens.
What they've read, and I think I watched Ancient Aliens last night as well, which is hard to believe, and I think it was talking about all these reptilian hybrid creatures and the fact that science of today can actually graft a second head onto a dog or reptilian something. And what they were sort of postulating was, if you went back far enough in time, when you look at the mummies' tombs and you're seeing these half beasts or demigods or hybrid somethings, that's just ancient alien technology that they came and played God, saw how they could slice and dice, our planetary DNA, and therefore that science is nearly available today. Go forward 50 years, we could do it ourselves. Therefore, anyone that was any more advanced than us,
2 years ago,
they could do it themselves.
2 years ago, an Italian surgeon was about to do a head transplant, would you believe, to a young fellow that was kind of crippled, hadn't got most of his body. And as they were preparing for it, he fell in love with one of the nurses and they went and eloped. So they didn't get to do it. But he's actually in the news. So in one of the ITV morning news with, forget that guy that's on normally, is it Pierce something or other, the news presenter on the morning probe? Anyway,
Piers Morgan.
They were chatting to the fella.
Piers Morgan?
It was Piers Morgan. Yeah, he was talking to this fella, and then they were asking, well, why did you sort of chicken out of this? And he said, I fell in love, and I could appreciate life, and they only gave me a certain percentage of life by transplanting my head, so I thought I'd better stick with the one I've got.
Better alive than dead. Better in the one
better
head.
Alive than dead.
No, but what was interesting, what you were saying is, we watched a bit of, actually, you were talking about Behind the Moon and then maybe them flying from Roswell to, the moon to into the core of the Earth. So what we're hearing there is Jules Verne's center, Journey to the Center of the Earth. He read one book. They also read the Roswell book. And there's always the dark side of the moon has always been something is expected to be going on there.
Pink Floyd, it's absolutely brilliant album.
Yeah, and even better, but it's there's a mix and match of, if I add a bit of this story to a bit of that story, we have a new story. Germany won the war. They hid on the moon. They got the tech. Actually, most of the German scientists after the war moved to America. The Germans started the moon, not the moon race, but the launch of the V1 and V2s. These rockets which were capable of going X distance. There seemed to be tech arriving there that 3 weeks beforehand didn't exist. So therefore, there was all these conspiracies saying that was a bit of alien tech being reverse engineered to start giving us rocket technology then that was built upon after the war to bring JF Kennedy's crew to be first men to the moon. And the journey to the moon and the stars was a distraction from the Cold War and everything else like that. But it's the technology started to accelerate, and I think we touched on this in many a program before. It was the era of Roswell, and round about then there was an awful lot of UFO sightings. But then there was an acceleration in technology from that day to this, that suddenly we're flying to Mars, not the moon. In terms of the Elon Musks, we're thinking of setting up bases there as opposed to just visiting. So the tech has gone on an exponential growth curve since in the last 70, 80 years. But the program I was watching last night was actually referring back to the movie Cowboys and Aliens. And actually there was news, I think it went back to the OK Corral and also other areas around that neck of the woods, that the Indians were talking, the local natives, were talking about these visitors from the stars. And then they start saying the cowboys were shooting at these leather birds and trying to shoot them out of the sky, but they couldn't. Then when you start to read closer, it wasn't leather, it was metal. It was not dragons, it was flames. It was lighting up the night sky. And again, going back in history, all the way to the Muslims and Mecca, it came from the sky. These gods were indirectly worshipping the technology, in my humble view. And all of us do, basically, worship the tech. We have it in our hands. We're talking to it now. And it's part of us and it's in our sight. So I better let George get a word in now.
Yeah, absolutely, because it's the idea of worshipping the tech, which is called idol worship, of course. One of the things that's quite interesting about that is that there were each of the old ancient stories, including the one, was his name Siri or Circa or whatever his name was, talking about the 13th planet that was supposed to whiz through, and every 3,600 years or so, the ellipse comes in and they can actually travel to us. And that's apparently where the Sumerians had come from. And there's all these ideas that apparently the DNA was changed and hacked and put into us from a certain period of time, which is where Adam and Eve came from. And I think we already had a story about that, where we were going back a few weeks ago on the fact that about 10,000 years or so many thousand years ago, there were just two people on the planet. And we kind of discussed the idea that the Neanderthals were still around at that point, but we wiped them out shortly afterwards when there was 4 people. But the interesting thing is that this kind of story is quite interesting, because we do kind of worship the tech, because you think about it, me and Garvin are actually separated by quite a distance. We've said this quite a few times. We have all this tech around us that allows us fairly quickly, within a fraction of a second, to communicate to one another. There's no lag or latency, as they call it. And the thing is that we're actually stuck, all of us at home these days, talking and chatting, and quite often talking to more people than we used to beforehand, because we wouldn't get to see as many of the people as we do now. I don't know how many people I've seen more recently over the last few weeks, but I see a lot more than I would have done when life was classed as normal. So we are in this kind of, it reminds me of lots of sci-fi. I remember reading an Ian Foster book. He was the guy that wrote A Room with a View. But this one was called The Machine Stops. And I think we've discussed that before in this show, where basically they forgot how to do things. They forgot how to figure things out because the technology did it all themselves. We're entering this era of time where artificial intelligence is coming. We talked about a few weeks ago the chip that they were putting into cockroaches that they could control where they went. And we've seen those ideas in sci-fi movies over the years, which is quite good fun. And that just shows how much the sci-fi inspires. But one of the problems that we were having, I know that somebody commented on one of our little Android video things that we put out on LinkedIn recently, and they were saying how frightening it is that we are allowing automation to take over our lives. And we're no longer thinking. The idea was that these things would be put there to take the drudgery out of life. But what if the drudgery was there so that you actually had time to think about things? Because you couldn't think about what you were doing. It was so automated, but you had time to think and ponder and come up with all these amazing ideas for stories that you could tell somebody else. That becomes great. Now we're so busy telling stories to other people, we don't have time to write those stories down because it's not automated. So there is that kind of conflict about how much should we be overly efficient to how much do we need to have time to figure things out and solve problems, because we don't really want to spoon feed ourselves at the same time and lose. There's a great movie. What is it? I think is it the movie with the little yellow android type thing? What was it called? Where he falls in love with another one, and it turns out all the people on the spaceship are basically being pampered to, and they're obese. They've never controlled their lives. They're just being fed tech and fed ideas to buy them, but they never do any exercises. And it's this little android's job to. I
don't know if you're mixing up two movies there. There might be WALL-E and
could be
something else.
Yeah, I think it's WALL-E. I think it's WALL-E. That was the one. I just couldn't get the name, WALL-E. But I think it was WALL-E. His job was to make sure that the whole place was actually working. But if you, in that sense, the the moral of that story is don't get so caught up in the technology that it does everything for you, because in the end you'll be a slave to it, not the other way around. And I think that's where the concerns are that we're actually getting into. So there's a lot of rambling going on about sort of worshipping tech, where in fact it's the agent that controls the tech that we have to be worried about.
Now you touched on I'm not going to say touched on two things because I can't remember one of them. So you touched on something, and because my Alzheimer's or my goldfish memory span is, I was trying to remember, but he kept on talking, and by the time he finished, I forgot half of it. So I'm coming back in to go. What I remember in the last minute, a couple of minutes, was this. The humdrum. It's the fact that the tech is meant to take away the humdrum, but if it did, you might be left with nothing. And I said that void we're saying is meant to be for creativity, but if you're not a creative individual, what the void has just done is left you with this hole that if you're not motivated to fill, you'd start worrying. You'd let the darkness in. You'd stress. You'd have no purpose. And this humdrum for some was purpose, whereas humdrum to others was a nuisance. It was in the way. It was taken from the value. So not everybody, that's where it comes back to our own lives. Not everybody is the same. It doesn't work equally. We don't have the same aspirations. A lot of people are happy just having a simple job, a simple purpose, earn enough, and then they value the time that's left over with their family, their friends, and going out, because time is filled. Whereas if their time was empty, that's where this darkness comes from. Not a lot of people, maybe now, they're even though they retain their title of CEO or head of industry, there's articles out there even today, I think, that says they're at home. No one can see them. No one can recognize that they're the god of industry and they're the captain of the ship, and they're at home in the bedroom typing on a I use the language of a typewriter. It's still a typewriter. I don't care if you call it an iPad or wherever it is. You've got to do the letters. You've got to create it. You've got this block between you and humanity. Your machine and tech is this funnel to the other side. If you're typing or if you're even talking and you're in your Zoom or Teams calls, that you're now nearly an equal size square on the screen, and your voice is a certain tone and presence. And if it was 200 heads on the screen, who's the boss and who cares? Because most of them could be turned off, and they're not even watching. They're in their pajamas. But there's a distance. What's happened is there's now a distance from the worker to the boss, and you can't see the suit. You're not walking by and everyone's in awe of the C-suite executives doing the strut of power to the boardroom and back again. So you miss that. That's what people say. They miss being seen. They miss being heard. They miss wearing the suit. They miss the journey from A to B that sets the pace of the day and divides the home life from the work life. If all we're doing is walking from one room to the next room, and we're lucky if we put our trousers on. So it's how you fill your day, but sometimes it's how others see you fill your day might also be the value.
Yeah, well, it's interesting because, as you said, we've been on this journey for 2 years. And I
think we better stop owning up how long we're on this journey, George. We're only starting this journey. Sorry.
No. The great thing is that they say it takes about 7 years to get going fully.
Right,
proper.
that's okay.
And you do need those 2 years, and it's about patience. It's getting in there. In fact, we've probably been on this journey all of our life to get here, because we've been learning about how to get here. And I think that becomes a very important part of that kind of process. But I think we are fitting in our time purposefully. There's a lot that we're suddenly realizing that we have to do. And if we want our particular business to be strong, and any kind of house, to be up for a long period of time, has to be built on a good, strong foundation. And we are currently building that foundation because we're finding, we've been talking to a lot of people about what we're doing. And more now we're finding that those people are saying to us, well, we can't find the holes in your arguments. We can't find the holes in your... So we've actually been building a very strong building that won't let the wind blow through it, and it won't be blown down by the bad wolf. And we're setting up a really strong foundation. And through questioning things and comparing notes on our experiences of past work in different organizations, we're starting to see, well, what were the flaws that were going on there? And quite often it's administration purposes, because Garvin's talked quite a few times about the insurance side of it. We've got to comply, and without the compliance, we literally can't function. So we have to make sure that we've got all the cogs in the right place, all the wheels connected to the right parts, so that when it does start to turn around, we won't suddenly find there's a little piece here that we forgot where it went and didn't put it in, and that turns out to be the very thing that holds everything together. It's that little peg at the very end, and it just goes boing like a big spring. So the key thing is that we are definitely building a strong foundation that will allow us to make sure that the academy that we're building will actually function really well. And we're sorting out all those little. It's all the little, they say it's the devil in the detail. It's the little details that we're trying to find out. And they may seem insignificant, very, really small, but it's those insignificant little elements that could be the downfall. And that's what we're trying to make sure that we actually cover. So in many cases, it's actually good that it seems as though we're taking a long time to do what we're doing, because we're going to be around for a long time.
Now, I love imagery, as you know, and I love devils. I'm taking the devil that was in the detail, and I'm going, because there's lots and lots of details, but it sounds like there's lots and lots of devils. And they are, it's not that they're the evil.
We're back to Aries again.
Exactly. I'm going, devil. It's the devil is in the detail, and the detail is king and all empowering. It's the detail is the foundation that we're building on. And therefore, the words I saw in another article again lately, and again from business colleagues, they use the language of, it's the same language of compliance, risk, and governance. And so the compliance is businesses need to comply. It's not that the businesses need to comply. I think the Darleks said it. I think it was Stavros or Davros. Stavros is a place.
Davros. Yeah, Davros.
Is it Stavros? Now, you're sure?
It could be Stavros.
See, Davros is where all those...
I think it's Davros.
Exactly. Yeah. No, one or the other. One bunch is somewhere in the Swiss Alps that all the global economic leaders go to for a bit of skiing and planning world domination and the future of the planet. And that might be Davros, I think, is it? Stavros.
No, it is Davros. Davros, Davros, is actually the fictional character.
Right. Well, then Stavros. I don't know which one. Right. Maybe the other words are make-up word, Stavros. We'll go with Davros. Davros is the king of the Darleks. He's a leader of the Darleks. And you must comply. We've done that before. You must comply. The Darleks are robots, and the robots are taking over the world. And what the robots are saying is, you must comply. And for them to be able to make order, then everyone which has free will must comply. Because if they have the free will, they're not going to be able to keep the order. But at the same time, we're back to the devil in the detail. I went off on a little one there for a second. The detail is the devil. It's the evil to most people. It's the bit they don't want to do because there's no... Even though it's the creation of all the value, it's the pain that we have to all put up with. I don't want to do paperwork. George doesn't want to do paperwork. We don't want to have Health and Safety Statement 107 and ISO 9000, Standard 9004, whatever that one is. I think it might be Health and Safety also. And if it's not, it doesn't matter. But what it is it's a stamp of recognition of compliance, of certification, of standardization, of process and procedure and control and validation. And what it is if you get your little sticky star, other people can rely on the fact that there's this rigor here of compliance, of order, of process that is signed off in terms of a quality something. So our whole language of, we want our certification for our courses. We want them to be QQI certified, which means it's got this high standard world recognized. We're in conversations with the enterprise Irelands of the world, the business side of the planet, and we have a good chance of being a HPSU. And the language of HPSU, again, it's a little acronym, high potential startup. what does that even mean? What the minimum of it is that it means, and we touched on it in one of our last shows, is you comply to the process, and if someone invests in you, they get a tax break because you've gone through the process of the government and the tax office as to you meet the criteria. Therefore, sticker number 2, you comply. And so the governance piece is audit trails and things for taxes and all the rest of it. Are you tax clear? Tax clearance means you're keeping your bookkeeping and accounts in the right format, putting it in at the right time, paying all your taxes for your value add tax for your sales of goods and your employer's tax for your employees. You're above board. You're not hoarding the tax man's money. Dragon's Den 101, Shark Tank 101. If they hear for 1 second you're financing your business with the tax man's money, you're frog marched out the door. And therefore, the devil is in the detail. And the detail is cross your I's, dot the T's, get your documentation, get it signed off, have it audited on a regular basis, and tell you what, now you're very good. You're an angel. We can do business with you. That's the devil is gone.
And there was the Enterprise back in again with Star Trek. And of course, they fought against the Borg, where resistance was futile. And the Borg were another set of android that basically assimilated all of mankind as far as they possibly could, so that they had to comply with what they were being said to do.
And I agree,
I think that's
George,
the key thing.
The gas thing is you've just said the revenue commissioners or the tax office are the Borg. There is no escaping. In business, you are not in business unless your Starship Enterprise complies with the Revenue Commissioner Borg. That's the only way forward. You get your certificate of compliance, you're tax clear, you're good to go off on your journey. But we're watching every day of the week.
And what it actually means is be organized, be Borg. Be organized. That's what they're saying. If you're not organized, then you're not compliant. And they said resistance is futile. So be organized, Borg. It's a good thing to remember.
Definitely.
And that's
there you go. We're going to use that in the promos. Definitely. Be organized is the Borg. You gotta be a machine.
Borg.
The gas thing is
gotta be a machine.
And we're back to the AI and the plugged in half hybrid human beings that we are. For us to comply, we've got to take away the free will and go half Borg hybrid in order to be able to fulfill these tasks of everyday meaningless. Otherwise, we'd all be running naked and free out there, running up and down the hills.
Well, it's actually quite funny because when you start to look at things, if you don't have that organization, if you don't have those structures and quite often little templates, people do go running off and doing, and you end up with chaos. So there comes an interesting, because to be organized, to communicate with everybody within your organization, you need to have some kind of structure, some kind of framework. And if people go outside of that, then the links of communication break down and you never get anything done. So there's an interesting sort of little.
So we're very lucky that we're actually saying,
the whole thing.
It's the business lessons from the Darleks and the Borg. That's what this is about. This episode is brought to you by the Darleks and the Borg on how to basically comply to your tax requirements for your business enterprise.
And don't be stubborn like the ox. Remember the ox? In the olden days used to be the engine to plow the fields, to plow the straight lines, to make sure you get things organized right so you can actually grow the food that you actually needed. So there we are. We actually covered the ox, which is this year for the Chinese, which happens to be the moon, which connected us to the Germans going to the moon, then coming back to the South Pole to find out whether there are reptiles inside the place or something like that. It eventually led us into the likes of how you need to be organized. And we became a Borg because we then started thinking about the AI and all the Daleks and Davros and all that kind of crazy stuff, because basically he just wanted to control mankind. And then we realized that basically Davros is really the tax man who is just trying to make sure that he controls mankind. And without compliance. He says there's no resistance. You have to comply to everything we're actually doing. So that's where we are at the moment. We've come to the end of this well-organized, well-structured show, which of course is absolutely perfect, he says, grinning. There's a few problems in there, I'm sure. Got a few coughs to cut out at some point. But we found that we've come to the end, and there'll be a lot of little gems that we can throw in there in our little organization to farm out to our interns to actually make sure they cut them into the little segments that we need and follow those templates. And by the time you get to watch this, it'll probably be me doing it again. But there you go. Hope you've enjoyed this show. Thanks very much, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
Now, and the lessons learned today from the Borg and Darleks is, resistance is futile. You must comply. We'll see you soon.
Be organised.
Get your tax clearance. That's the only way to do it. All the best.
Bye.
Hope you enjoyed this video. Please subscribe and click on the bell for notifications.